Welcome to Nasdaq Trade Talks. I'm your host, Jill Malantrino, global markets reporter at Nasdaq. Joining me at the market site in Times Square, we have Andrew Channon. He's the CEO of Procure Asset Management. We're going to take a look at thematic ETF investing within the space economy. Andrew, it's great to have you with us. Perfect timing, the 50th anniversary of Apollo 11, and it seems to be the space economy is front and center again.
Absolutely. There's so much going on with the space economy. Certainly it's the 50th anniversary, so everyone's excited about what we've done, but what I think is most exciting about is where we're going and all these new technologies that are allowing the space economy to grow. And if you think about it, it's kind of each previous technology that's been created can leapfrog and create so many different other technologies. So what we're seeing right now is the infrastructure that we'll be utilizing to build tomorrow's next revolutions in the space economy.
Yeah, but according to a couple of analysts with Goldman Sachs, Morgan Stanley, U.S. Chamber of Commerce, you're looking at $1 trillion to $1.5 trillion space economy by 2040. What kinds of industries are you getting exposure to?
So there's satellite manufacturers and operators, there's rocket manufacturers, there's ground equipment. But when you think about the different technologies and the different trends that are utilizing space technology, it's all these megatrends that we're hearing about every day, like 5G and cloud computing and blockchain. So all of these areas are heavily reliant upon space-based systems. Most people don't even realize that.
Right, and how can investors get exposure to this? Because there's just so many different kind of sub-industries within the space economy.
Right, so you could try to pick individual publicly traded names and manage a portfolio on your own, or we created UFO, the first global pure play space ETF that currently invests in roughly 30 companies from around the world, specializing in all these different areas that we mentioned within the broader space industry.
It's perfect. UFO is the most perfect ticker symbol. What are some of the companies that you look at? Give it a couple names.
So there's companies like Maxar, a Canadian company that many people, again, probably aren't too familiar with, but you see a lot of the recent SpaceX launches of satellites on behalf of the Canadian government, and those are Maxar satellites. Companies like Iridium, Intelsat, Eutelsat, so a lot of SAT companies, and most people don't have any or much exposure to these companies. So UFO is actually kind of providing new exposures for people that do want to gain access to the publicly traded space industry.
Yeah, because it's really hard to identify each one on your own and then to have the capital to do so. There's kind of, it's an umbrella for all of that.
Right, so it gives you instant diversification across 30 plus companies from around the world. But otherwise, unless you're an extremely wealthy individual or a pension fund or something like that, you're not going to have access to private companies either. So this kind of gives you a way to get exposure to these various companies on a diversified basis.
And the fund divides its constituents into two different tranches.
Exactly. So there are these groups that represent roughly 80% of the fund, which are these pure play companies, meaning that they derive a majority of their revenues from space-related activities. And then we have these more diversified plays. And in there, in this 20% or less tranche, you'll find companies that you might be more familiar with, aerospace and defense names like Airbus and Boeing.
Yeah, it's really interesting. You go from aero defense to aerospace. That's really going to be the new moniker within these industries.
It certainly could be. You hear things like the Space Force, and you hear Macron out of France this past weekend saying that he's going to build a space command as well. So the militarization of space, as well as the defense of Earth from things like asteroids, these are all growing industries.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Andrew, for spending time with us at MarketSite. And thank you for joining us on Trade Talks. I'm Jill Malantrino, global markets reporter at Nasdaq.